taking time today to vary our normal format in the sense that we're going back to school. This is the course which I suppose we could academically entitle Metaphysical Bible Studies 1. We hope that you will think of it in this tone and work with it studiously as it evolves. 7 steps in the creative process. Now, the great enigma of Western religion is the very source book of the Judeo-Christian tradition, the Bible itself. The Bible has been traditionally presented as a book about God, written by God. And thus, it is presented as infallible and beyond question. But because of what I call many incredibilities and impossibilities and even obscenities, it has been for many totally irrelevant for life, suitable only for services of worship and on holy days. For most persons, the Bible is possessed as something to swear on, to record births and marriages in, and to piously display on the symbolic family altar. You may recall the story of the little boy who ran across a dusty Bible on the bookshelves, and the little boy said, "Whose book is this, Mama?" She says, "That's God's book." He said, "Don't you think we should give it back to him? Nobody here ever reads it." And this is really sad because all the great thinkers and philosophers of all time have said that man has but to know himself to discover the secrets of the universe. And when rightly understood, the Bible is the finest mirror of life by which we can get the most revealing insight into ourselves. But there's no mirror effect if we read the Bible literally as a historical document. Actually, there's little to be gained by reading the Bible as a book. I'm sure you have, as I have, through the years, come to a determination that you should read the Bible. Perhaps I've even set out, as I did once, to read the Bible from cover to cover. I don't know about you, but I eventually bogged down in the these and the thous somewhere along Leviticus or something like that. It's important, I think, to recognize that religion did not come out of the Bible. The Bible came out of religion. This is a very important statement. Religion didn't come out of the Bible. The Bible came out of religion. So the thing is not true because it's in the Bible. The fundamentalist preacher would often say, it's in the book. There it is, so it's true. It's not true because it's in the Bible. It was included in the Bible as one of the little books, which is the literal meaning of the word Bible, little books. It was included by judgment of a group of theologians and scholars who considered it to be helpful to the cause of truth. But they were very abstract in their thought of this, very absolute in their position of selecting 1 or 2 or 3. And they were selected from a great number of books, and there are many other books that were left out. The apocryphal works, also the pseudepigraphal works. Great volumes of works that were left out of the selections, simply because someone decided these were most relevant to the cause of truth. But they were put together, the little books, into the one book that we now have that we call the Bible. The Bible cannot be read as a novel. No way. Because there's no synoptic chronology. Bible scholars and historians differ as to which they think should be the first book. Some think that probably it starts around with the book of Amos and Hosea. The other books were looking backward and trying to delineate some of the causes of the flow of civilization that they knew and to give them a greater sense of identity as a people. The Israelites looking for legitimacy as a group of people. But none of the books were written to be a part of some ultimate scripture. Bible writers are essentially poets who use symbolic words and forms. We see this, for instance, as Shakespeare wrote of the Forest of Arden, that in it one could find tongues in trees and books in the running brooks, sermons in stones and good in everything. But who ever saw a tongue in a tree or a sermon in a stone, except a poet? We need this sense to understand the Bible, because this is the way it was written. What does a poem mean? It has been said a poem does not mean. It is. You read meaning into it according to where you are in consciousness. So it is with art or music. So it is with the Bible. So we should avoid dogmatic or generalized interpretations of the Bible, even in a metaphysical sense. For the Bible has no meaning in an absolute sense. It simply is. And as a teacher, I fail you completely if I give you the interpretation. This has always been a mistake, even of metaphysical teachers. This is what it means. This is what I see it as meaning. This is a suggestion to you as you seek to find meaning in yourself, as you mirror the reflection of life and gain insights into it from your meaning of the Bible. You can find meaning in the Bible by dealing with it at the level of your need and with the insights revealed through your own inner flow of inspiration. Mystic thinkers have always seen the world as the shadow of a great reality. They have said, along with Elizabeth Barrett Browning, earth's crammed with heaven and every common bush afire with God. But only he who sees takes off his shoes. The rest sit round it and pluck blackberries. Most Bible studies, I believe, amount to mere blackberry picking. As the poet suggests it, feet symbolize understanding. Shoes represent the fixed attitudes and prejudices that obscure and frustrate the flow of truth. So I say to you all, take off your shoes. Unfetter your understanding and sense meanings that mirror your own soul unfoldment. I suppose many of you next week will come barefoot. We're beginning today a series of 7 lessons dealing with the first chapter of Genesis, the 7 days of creation. And we're thinking of it in terms of the 7 steps in the creative process. Simply a suggestion by which we can read meanings into what otherwise is very obscure. Now, the insistence that it all happened in 7 literal days has given rise to the great debate that is ongoing between fundamentalist creationists and the whole broad spectrum of modern science. Actually, a generation or more ago, we thought we had laid this controversy to rest, but it's had a tremendous resurgence in recent years. Some of you may have read yesterday in the Times a story that in California the educators have decided to scrap a lot of the new books of science for high school texts because they reflected too much of a watered-down version of evolution, influencing the creationist theory that the world was created in 7 days. This is a controversy that still goes on. But there are many problems with the view that the whole universe and all the vast array of fossils and cave wall drawings and mounds left by primitive civilizations were all put together in one grand point in some time about 6,000 years ago. In the field of anthropology alone, we're faced with overwhelming evidence to show that the human trek up to contemporary awareness has been exceedingly long. It took Homo sapiens about 500,000 years to learn to polish a flint, and probably another 1,000,000 years before he wrote a Bible. I don't take this just as an abstract sense. I've personally visited the caves in Lascaux, France, where primitive artists had left their creative handiwork on the walls. It's been amazingly preserved for more than 50,000 years. It's very hard to stand and watch this, look at it, feel the energy in it, and think that the world was all put together in just 6,000 years ago in one piece. But let's leave that controversy to others. It has no real relevance to us here today. We're thinking in terms of the mirror reflection of what the Bible can mean in terms of our own personal growth. Let's turn, first of all, to Genesis 1 to 5, and read the words, which will be our text for today. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form, and void and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, and God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, one day. And first of all, we must clearly realize, and we want to point this out repetitiously in the weeks to come, this was never intended to be history. It was never intended to be history. It's not a story of how the physical universe was created. There's a word in the original Hebrew text that was never translated into English because the translators simply didn't know what to do with it, so they just left it out. This has often been true in Bible interpretation, Bible translation. In the second chapter of Genesis, the 4th verse, we come across a rather interesting and very significant phrase. It says, these are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created. And parenthetically, in the day that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created in the day that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens. These are the generations originally said, it was in the Hebrew, ele toledeth, ele toledeth. Now the word tho was ignored. They didn't understand it. It had no meaning. They couldn't translate it. But the word tho sets the tone. It indicates that the whole outline is symbolic. Because in the original it said, these are the generations later to be described in symbolic language. These are the generations later to be described in symbolic language. And this was left out. Because the tho means a hieroglyph, a fable, a symbolic narrative. And because of this omission in the scripture, the whole idea seemed to imply that the world was created in 7 days. But omitted was the thought that this was a symbolic representation, a hieroglyph, a fable, a narrative that symbolized something else. And the creationists have never been subjected to this tho, a very important insight. So the writers of Genesis actually warn us in advance that they're dealing with a spiritual process rather than a historical account. Tremendous omission in Bible study. Now, it's important to point out right at the outset that the first 2 chapters of Genesis, again, lead to a great controversy because they tell contradictory stories. If you read it literally and try to understand it, you immediately get bogged down in this tremendous contradiction. Because on the 6th day of the first 7 days, as we'll deal with in the weeks to come, the 6th day, it says God created man in his image likeness. You remember that we've referred to that time and time again in our Bible study. But in the 2nd chapter, it starts in again and it says, there was no man to till the ground. So then God formed man out of the dust of the earth. That's in the 2nd chapter. How does this work? What does it mean? How could there possibly be a creation of man and then no man at all to till the ground and has to create him again out of the dust of the ground? The important thing is that the 1st chapter deals with involution, the involutionary creation, the ideation, the formulation of a plan in consciousness, creative process as we're saying it. And the 2nd chapter deals with the evolution, the idea manifesting in a mind set to plant seeds in the ground and create things, till the soil, and ultimately out of the soil make bricks and build houses and skyscrapers and books and all the things that have evolved, the evolutionary process which the whole Bible in its later form articulates. 2 entirely separate creations, involution and evolution. See, we tend to think in terms of time and substance and form. But none of these is involved in the creative process that Genesis 1 articulates. It is divided into 7 days, which symbolize 7 periods, or 7 movements in divine mind. 7 was a symbol of completeness to the Hebrews. Nothing can be added, nothing can be taken away. So the 7 days involve a moving process in consciousness. But no manifest thing results. It's like, suppose you have a problem. Well, let's think of it perhaps more objectively. Let's think of it in terms of a great mind like Einstein, Albert Einstein, sitting in his study, contemplating the universe, thinking in terms of the structure of the physical aspect of life. And suddenly into his mind comes an idea, and he says, I have it. But what does he have? Nothing tangible. He hasn't got anything on paper. The ultimate research in the laboratory hasn't been done yet, which he must do in order to pass along to his confreres in science the things that he already has in consciousness that he feels when he says, I have it. But that process leading up to the I have it was the involution of the idea. Later, he evolved the formulas, the theorems, the algebraic equations, by which he could demonstrate to the men of science the theory of evolution or the theory of relativity and the various components of it that led up to the present atomic age. All of it began as an idea forming in mind. So this is the way the creative process works, you see. And we find it says, in the beginning God, the first 4 words of the Bible, in the beginning God. The tendency is to think, back there sometime, God like Mark Connolly's Green Pastures, where God sits on a big white cloud with his long flowing beard. He pats his tummy and says, I think I'll create me a world. In the beginning, back there. But in the beginning, God, in the Hebrew, is Breshith Elohim. Breshith Elohim. When you deal with Genesis as a historical account, the beginning seems to be first in order of time. The first thing that happened in order of time, year one. But this is error. It is first in order of creation. In the beginning, Breshith means in principle. In principle, the foundation on which all things grow. It's like mathematics. In the beginning, God would be likened to a mathematical one. You may have 1, 2, 5, 10, 1,000, a billion, a trillion. Only people trying to solve the national debt talk about a trillion, but the rest of us don't know what it understands, what it means. But all the numbers that evolve are resolvable back into the basic one. This is the theory of mathematics. All resolvable back into one. One is the beginning, the starting point, the foundation on which all evolves. So Breshith means in principle. So it is saying in principle God. This is not dealing with a God that began sometime in time, but God, the supreme energy, the creative source, now present as a presence. We get involved in all sorts of manipulations of mind and the multiplication of things in terms of houses and lands and money and jobs and creative arts and all these things that are out here. But back of it all is one creative mind, one creative presence, one creative activity. In contemplating the formulation of a plan for some project, we need to get back to the in the beginning God, the fundamental principle, that all is an evolution of one mind in which my mind exists as an activity. And I must get back to that awareness to get it all put together, so then I can let the creative flow manifest in me, fulfilling the great potential of my mind. So the first step then is to realize that the whole of God mind and its unfolding creative process is right where you are as the source. This is the missing link in so much of our contemplation. We need always to get back and start at the beginning. One presence, one power, one life, one substance in which I live and move and have my being, in which finds fulfillment in me and as me. This is the starting point. An evolution can take place in time because there is a changeless principle at the root, the infinite mind in which all are plan and substance. This principle is not something that was left behind when the world was created back there. It's not over and done with. It's a continuing fact, always present as a presence. So in the beginning, in principle, God, divine mind, created the heavens and the earth. So right away we say, well, what happens here? How did God create the heavens and the earth? The problem is that we think of create in terms of construction, putting things together, existing materials in a process that takes time and depletes substance. But this, God created the heavens and the earth, is simply divine mind defining the field of activity, the milieu. The word create here is the Hebrew word bara, which has a connotation toward formative process. It is divine mind acting upon itself, a kind of self-contemplation. It's creating out of itself. In science, this would be referred to as ex nihilo, out of nothing. It is ideas forming in mind and setting into operation what is referred to as spirit moving on the face of the deep. Now, because each of us is created in God's image likeness, created of the same infinite mind, our minds work in the same way, because our minds are simply an activity, identity within divine mind. There's no separation. You don't go to divine mind. Divine mind doesn't go to you. You can't get out of it. You're an activity within the infinite field of divine mind. So we're continuously creating ex nihilo, out of nothing, whether we know it or not. In a flash, I have an idea. It may be one of many things. It may be something to do with your work, something in your recreation, something in your relationships, or just an idea that unfolds as you're in your quest for truth. But I have an idea in a flash. Where does the idea come from? Out of nowhere, out of nothing, ex nihilo. It is simply a movement of mind on the face of the deep. Because you're always in mind, you're always in the infinite flow of divine consciousness. But sometimes it springs forth into our consciousness. We become aware of that which we've always been. It didn't come from anywhere, it came out of nowhere. So we need to keep in mind that since you're created in and of infinite mind, Your mind is a miniature production of that mind. And the creative process of Genesis is the key to your creativity. We're not always aware of that. Like the prodigal son, we go out into the far country and live riotously, draw upon our substance but lose the sense of resource. But the prodigal son had to come to himself and arise and go unto the Father, to go back to the basic one, to know where my strength is, where my substance comes from. And when I know that, then I have the key to creativity, the key to prosperity, the key to health, the key to all the things that we seek, all springing forth from this basic oneness within. And the word creative is a word that we overwork in our day, probably, because we don't always understand what it means. Unfortunately, we tend to think of creativity in terms of what is created, instead of the process by which things are created. So we look at some creative work, we're at an art gallery and we see some masterwork, or we listen to music, or we see somebody making a sculpture piece or writing poetry or whatever, and we say, he's so creative. And usually there's a wistful sigh and perhaps even an implied feeling, maybe even a statement, I wish I were creative, but I'm such a klutz. Almost always we add that. I wish I were creative like that. But the truth is, everyone is creative. Everyone. It is the one supreme fact of existence. It is the nature of the infinite to create. It is the nature of man to be creative. At one time it was popular to refer to creativity as brain power. But the brain doesn't secrete thought as the liver secretes bile. The brain is an instrument of the mind. But mind is non-material, non-physical. As we said, it's the focus of God-mind at the point of view. So the creation is a continuing process. You're a part of it. You're a channel for its outworking. It could be said, as the poet often expresses it, that God needs your unfolding creativity to complete his work. As Browning says, God could not create Antonio Stradivari's violins without Antonio. God could not compose the letter that you write, or the thing that you build, or the idea that you express without you to unfold it. So you don't really create at all. You co-create. All that you achieve comes out of this creative flow, which is the fundamental essence of the universe. You may have a need and attune your mind to divine mind, and the universe teems with life and vitality and action, and is prolific with ideas. You outline the need, and the creative process fills the need. And collectively as a society, whenever there's been a need, there has invariably appeared someone with an idea or an invention or development that has provided the solution. As Paul says, and my God shall supply every need of yours according to his riches. So this process is the means by which all things are accomplished. It doesn't matter whether it's engaged in solving a math problem, fitting together intricate pieces of wood or metal or plastic, placing together of meaningful sequences of words, phrases, and sentences, or the enjoining of certain mixed tonal sequences. The function for each is precisely the same. And all of our great people, such as Beethoven, Shakespeare, Edison, Churchill, all have used the same faculties of creative thought, drawing upon the same source, but only the media, the raw materials, tone, color, words, were different. So there's one creative mind and one creative process. And the text goes on to say, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Again, symbolical. It is a challenge to get away from the delusion of outer lights, outer sources of wisdom and activity, creativity and ideas. Get back to the true light that lighteth every man coming into the world. As Paul says, don't let the world shape your mind, but let God remold your mind from within. To get into the creative process, we have to get back to the one, Bereshith Elohim, in the beginning, at the root, God. Get back to the source, back to your own oneness. Darkness on the face of the deep simply symbolically refers to getting into the inner chamber and close the door, as Jesus puts it. The deep is what Emerson calls the wise silence, beyond sight and sound, beyond sensation and materiality. So then, with the frame of reference set, the first movement of the Spirit on the water, thus the first step in the creative process, the first day of creation, let there be light. And this was not the sun. When we think of light, we think of the sun, we think of reflections of the sun and daylight and so forth. This was not the sun, which you will see as we go along was not created until the fourth day, which is rather odd, which shows that the persons who wrote had a very primitive view of astronomy. This is not light visible to the eye. It is light in terms of potentials. Not aware of anything or specific idea, just the awareness of the whole field, the allness. It is setting the stage, in a sense, on which the drama can unfold. It is primal illumination, not knowing about something, just knowingness, getting into the arena of allness. Jesus has a statement about this. He says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And this is an entirely different connotation of the word light. The word yoke comes from the same root as the word yoga. It means union or oneness. Jesus is saying, when you are centered in your own oneness with the divine flow, Bereshith Elohim, in the beginning, the root, the foundation, you walk in light, which lightens every challenge or burden in life. And he's saying, if you plug into the universe, as I have done, you will experience the same inner light and outer power that I have manifested. Light was an important reality to Jesus. Remember, he said, "I am the light of the world. I am the light of the world." He was not referring to himself. This is why Bible readers often miss the mark. They fail to get the idea, because he wasn't talking about himself. He rarely talked about himself. He was referring to the I am. I am is the light of the world, the divine flame, which we experience at the point of our own I amness. Then he said, "You are the light of the world. Let your light shine." You can project this inner light as you become what we might call a transparency for its radiance. It's interesting that Jesus uses the word light, which has a connotation in the Greek toward transparent. Transparent. In a Sunday school, the teacher asked the children, "What is a saint?" One little boy raised his hand. I know. He was remembering his trip to Europe, how they had seen many stained glass windows in the great cathedrals with the light shining through the various figures on the stained glass. He said, "A saint is one who the light shines through." Out of the mouths of babes. Important insight, you see. Emerson talks of the transcendent awareness, or cosmic consciousness that comes over us, when we identify with this movement of God saying, "Let there be light." And he says, in this moment when I feel this tremendous process, he says, "I feel that nothing can befall me in life. No disgrace, no calamity which nature cannot repair. Standing on the bare ground, my head bathed by the blithe air, and uplifted into infinite space, all mean egotism vanishes, and I become a transparent eyeball. I'm nothing, I see all. The currents of the universal being circulate through me, and I'm part or parcel of God. I become a transparent eyeball." A very interesting concept, isn't it? We've always thought of the eyes as the windows through which we see. But as many writers in recent years have talked about, perception is a very puzzling phenomenon. Maybe no one really knows how we see. Maybe there's a lot to be learned about this. Perhaps the Bible has some insights that can help us. Some time ago, one of my research assistants, and I should say parenthetically that I'm referring to people who voluntarily decide they're going to send me something they think I would enjoy and something that would be helpful in my quest for truth. So one of my assistants sent me an article, an inspiring article, entitled "Blindness, the New Seeing of the World" by Jacques Lecirand. He lost his eyesight in an accident when he was 8. But he went on to become a brilliant student. Yet he was increasingly disturbed by the absence of any recognition in education that the world is not just outside, but also within. He describes the experience of becoming blind and having the frightening challenge of finding his way between doors and walls and human beings and trees. But early along he discovered something very important, that though he could not see the light of the world outside, yet the light was still within. He found that as long as he paid attention to the light within, he rarely had any problems getting around. He discovered that there was only one way to see this inner light, and that was through love. If he was ever overcome by sorrow, or when anger took hold of him, he became prejudiced or filled with animosity, the light immediately decreased. He says that sometimes it even went out completely. Only then did he become really blind. But this blindness was a state of not loving. It was not a loss of his eyes. Beautiful. It's a new insight into the statement, "I am the light of the world." Getting centered in the light within, which is not something the eyes see, something the eyes see from. This is the first step in the application of the creative process. Remember, in the Hebrew, the word for eye is A-Y-I-N, means fountain. Fountain. The eye is the fountain. This is the transparent eyeball, through which the transcendent light flows. You don't see light. You see with light. Think about that. You don't see light, you see with light. And the light flows forth out of your eyes rather than into your eyes. Only a person who has lost his physical sight can understand this. We can try to work toward that, but it's a tremendous realization. Isaiah focuses on this process when he says, "Then shall thy light break forth as the morning, and thy health shall spring forth speedily." But the light breaking forth is not breaking forth in the sky, it's breaking forth out of ourselves. We begin to see from a new insight, new perception. And then health springs forth speedily. And we could add prosperity springs forth speedily. Love springs forth speedily. Peace springs forth. All of it springs forth out of our new way of seeing. And God saw the light, the scripture goes on, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening and there was morning one day. So the first step in the creative process is the awakening to the cosmic awareness of the whole, in which all things exist. It is the dawning of light within. Not out here on the horizon, but within. The perception of potential truth. As Browning says, truth is within yourself. It takes no rise from outward things, whatever you may believe. Light represents wisdom. Darkness represents undeveloped capacity. And they're day and night. So dividing the light from the darkness is in a way separating such simple things as the can't thoughts from the can thoughts. This simply marks the thing Jacques Lasserane is talking about when he says the light was within him, made real by love. And when love's absence prevailed in the form of sadness or anger or envy, and the light went out, and he became really blind. Dividing the light from the darkness is, in a sense, mind separating the illusions from the realities. The appearance, for instance, is that things are good and evil, light and dark. This is the opposites that seem so much a part of life. The Oriental yin and yang, attraction and repulsion, good and evil. But the important thing is God didn't create evil. God didn't create darkness. God is the light. But the light always seems to imply darkness because there's always a shadow, the other side of the moon, the dark side. There always seems to be ignorance where there's wisdom. So separating the light from the darkness is separating the appearances from the realities. It's important that we have this insight. This is important. This is a part of the step. Because day is the consciousness of light within the essence of good. Night is the concealment of the light, the frustration of good, which we call error or evil. A lot is made of the reality of good and evil in much fundamental religion. And usually much more attention is given to the evil than the good. More attention is focused on the devil than is on God. You often hear the preacher talking about sin and being against evil and all this sort of thing. But the important thing is separate the good from the evil so that you can emphasize the good. The good is light. The evil is simply the absence of light. Good is nothing, or the evil is nothing, no thing. Evil is not a power, not a force, as it's intended to be. So often they talk about the force of evil is at root in the world, luring people aside from the path of good. This is darkness. All things exist in darkness, but they're figments of imagination. Separate the darkness from the light. Emphasize the light, the good, the day, separate from the night. So the first day of the creative process is returning to the root in principle, becoming established in oneness of mind, turning from worldly wisdom and experience to let the creative process begin. Let go of I can't, open the way to I can because I am. And remember, as we discern the inner meaning of the 7 days of creation, we want to see it as a process, not a series of discrete acts, not things that begin and end and begin and end. First there's light, then there's firmament, and on through the 7 days. A process that unfolds, like a rose unfolding. We're going to use the symbol of a rose as we go through the many weeks to come. The rose gradually unfolds, and when we see it by elapsed time photography, we see a continuous movement. Continuous movement. So this is a continuous moving process. We're going to think of it in terms of a meditation technique that we can use to direct the creative flow. As a result, at the conclusion of our 7-day series, or 7 days of consideration, we will have possession of a technique in meditation we can deal with in sitting down any day, any time, in the face of any need, to get back to the root, and let the rose unfold, let the process evolve through us until we feel ourselves fully alive and alert, till creativity just drips from our tongue and radiates from our fingertips, where we can solve our needs in all the many channels of human need. Next week we're going to deal with the second day, the second step in the creative process. Let there be a firmament, opening the way to the faith factor of consciousness, a very important next step. We're going to be dealing with one process that may unfold for you in terms of your consciousness and need. One process, one source, which involves in many different ways. For instance, a group of creative minds could sit in meditation together, each dealing with this meditation process, each seeing himself as a clear channel for the outpouring of creative mind, and each could go off and let the process be outformed. One might write a poem, another one might compose a musical sonata, one might paint a garden scene, another would come up with a plan for a great architectural structure. One person may have a brainstorm dealing with an advertising campaign, another one might have an idea relating to a recipe to bake a cake. But all of them are touching the same mind. And that's the beauty of this wonderful universe. It is an all-potential force that will always be to you whatever you permit it to be. So we say, get the feeling of Bresheth Elohim, in the beginning God. And in this great undergirding consciousness, feel the power of let there be light. Let there be light. I'm going to ask you to be still for a moment. We're going to symbolically sense this process. We've used tone many times in the past. We're going to use it today in a different way. Use it as a basis, as a foundation, as a backdrop through which the let there be light process may unfold. I'm going to ask you to join with me, first of all, just humming a note, and let it be an articulation in sound of one. The root, the whole, the one. In the beginning, Bresheth Elohim. One. Keep this tone going now as I speak. Let's get the feeling that we're establishing ourselves in the realization of oneness, wholeness, the basic fundamental principle on which all things express. In the beginning, God, Bresheth Elohim. And against the backdrop of this sound, this concept, this consciousness, this awareness, let me speak the word as if it's the superconsciousness within you speaking the word to you, opening a whole new vista of accomplishment for you. Let there be light. Let there be light. Let there be light. And get the feeling now of light dawning in your consciousness. Not light that you see with the eyes, but light that is a reality within you, an awareness, a consciousness. Let there be light. And if there's any problem in your life, any difficulty, anything that you're seeking to overcome, get the sense that this light dawns and springs forth through you and from you as a process of healing. Let's think of those words of Isaiah. Then shall thy light break forth as the morning, and thy health, or thy abundance, or thy love, or thy peace, thy overcoming, shall spring forth speedily, springing forth into your consciousness right now, establishing in you and establishing you in wholeness, completeness, totality. One. May this consciousness of oneness, this tone, remain in your awareness through all the coming week. Even if you don't voice it, it will still be an echo. It will be expressing through you in wonderful ways. And let it go for a moment, and when you run out of breath, just let it fade off into the distance. And let's all let our mind move in a thought of gratitude. Feel grateful. Just feel a sense of gratitude. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. So be it.
This concludes side 1. It will now be necessary to forward the tape to the end of this side and turn the cassette over to listen to side 2.